Well, good morning and welcome to Being Your Own CEO. This is a success circle that's been running now every Tuesday morning for, gosh, I think maybe about a year and a half, isn't it, Nathan? I think it's been a while.
It could well be, and I've lost track.
Yeah. So we like to get together and share information and give each other encouragement and discover new things and just generally socialize as well. So this morning we have a topic that we kind of decided at the last minute last time. But first, I think it would be a good idea for us to introduce ourselves. So, Nathan, why don't you go first and introduce yourself? Tell us where you are and what you're doing and what you do.
Well, at the moment, I'm in Ensenada, Mexico, Baja California, about 120 kilometers south of San Diego, for those of you who are curious. My main gig for the last 16, 17 years has been working as a freelance technical writer, and that means writing mostly for magazines, the odd corporation, and writing articles about how to do stuff, mostly to do with computer graphics and photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
So mostly technical. That's interesting,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Not so much these days, but prior to about 6 weeks ago, yes.
Right on. So we'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes.
Sure.
And Carlo, how about you? How would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, Carlos Savio. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I operate a comfortably small digital marketing agency working with no more than 6 to 8 clients on 6-month cycles and helping more from as my background in managerial finance and consulting, I focus more on the analytics of what they're doing as opposed to the glitz by giving them information that they can see how they're converting and how they're reaching their audience. And I'm enjoying this group because it is an encouraging and relaxing environment.
That was the intent. Thank you. And I might just say a little something about what I do. My business is called Work Style Lifestyle Consulting. I do business coaching, especially for solo entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. As that seems to be a new word that's popping up everywhere now. It's a little bit less cumbersome, maybe. I like to help them get focused and stay motivated and build systems that promote their business and make them more efficient. 2 things that I like to do is this Tuesday morning success circle to support solo entrepreneurs. But I also have a 3-part course where I teach people how to work with Google Plus, and how to navigate your way around Google Plus. And once you're there and set up, what do you do? What do you do now? And so yeah, my little course is called Beginner's Google for Business. So now this morning we thought we might have a conversation. We talked about the Zen of Writing, and it struck me as I sat and thought about this that we all need to do some writing. Especially if we have websites and do blogs and if we write for a living, as Nathan has been doing. So as I looked at this, I thought, well, so what sort of a process? What happens for me? And and I of course was trying to kind of connect it up with the whole concept of Zen. So I began to think about my Monday morning mindset blog posts that I've been doing, both on my website and on Google+. So basically, I thought I would just kind of start us off by sharing what my process is, and then maybe you folks would be ready to kind of do that as well. So the first thing that happens for me, and I usually begin by 2 or 3 days before my deadline. I finally realized that if I didn't have a deadline, it wasn't ever going to happen. So I made a commitment that I would post something every Monday morning. And that has been the key for me, is making that commitment, not only to myself, but to the community in the Plus Your Business community. So I did that, and so that was a good thing. So I began maybe 2-3 days before the deadline, and I scout around. Normally, I as time goes on, I have a list of possible topics. So I go to my list and I look at my list and kind of decide what grabs me in terms of a topic. What would I like to write about? And I'm not sure what exactly makes me choose one over the other. It's just a gut feeling. Okay, that one grabs me this morning. I don't know why. But then once I've decided on the topic, what I'm going to write about, then I let it sit and I ruminate about it. And I think that's where the meditative part comes in for me. So what exactly do I really want to say about that? And I've often joked that the things come to me when I'm in a very relaxed state, usually in the shower. I've often joked that maybe I need to live in the shower, but so I do that, and then once something kind of bubbles to the top for me, then I sit down and I just basically do sort of a stream of consciousness. I just write and write and write, just whatever comes to mind, and then I go away and leave it again. And I just let it sit. And I think, again, that's a little bit of that sort of meditative place where you just let it be and let it flow in the way that it is. And then my last stage would be to usually the day before the deadline. I sit down and I do my editing and my sharpening. I sharpen things and shorten maybe, or add something and so forth. So then once I'm ready to publish, it's ready. Now here comes Craig, and I'm so glad that he's you're in a time, you just jumped in at the right time, Craig, because I wanted to share with everyone that I've started working with Craig on doing some SEO for all of my blog posts. So I'm now trying to incorporate the whole keyword search into this process, and I'm not exactly sure where that. Right now it happens after I've done the writing, and because I have a sense that I don't want to disrupt that flow of how things came to me, what I wanted to say, and how it all came about. But I don't know. I view this as a kind of a struggle between my left and my right brain. I think the whole keyword search is totally left brain work, and what I try to do is create this situation where my right brain tells me what to say and what to do. So I suppose that's meditative, or we can speak about it as right brain or whatever. So as just for me to finish what my process is, I promised I was going to share a phrase that came up in a song that we sang in my choir, and it was a kind of a quotation from Lao Tzu. And this song has only got 4 lines. It said, "Let things ripen and then fall. Force is not the way at all. Just let it go and you will see the way to do is to be." And I thought, when we sang that song, I thought, you know, that really sums up for me how I try to do my writing process. So, so that's by the way, the last 2 lines were, and the song and the music were adapted by Lawrence Cole, who is a community choir leader out of Port Townsend, Washington. So that's my process. So, Craig, what about you? Are you there?
I just wanted to say hello. Can you hear me?
We can
hear you.
Okay. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, I turned my camera off, but it didn't appear to be working. So, yeah. How do you justify your right and your left brains as far as word searches go? The way I like to do it, and the way I think works best for me, is to look at. I know that I have a topic that I want to write about.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of ponder that for a little bit, and then I jump over to my keyword tool. I use Jaxi, and I just look at terms around that particular topic. That, my right brain is working on a topic. My left brain says, okay, how can I narrow this down so that the people that are searching for this topic are actually going to find it? Mm. And I just glance through the list of things that Jaxi shows me. And I look to see, which ones are things that I might be able to rank for. I mean, you get a various level of ranking inside of Jaxi that tells you, these are red. Your chances of ranking for this are never going to happen. These are yellow. You might get there, but only if you've got supporting information. And then the green ones that, you'll probably rank for this fairly easily. So I look for the green ones. And I say, okay, these are the topics, or these are the way that I word things so that when I write, they'll show up in the search. And then I go out and I write my content. And so there it is. So then I say to myself, all right, so I've written the content. Then I pull up the keyword list again and I say, all right, is there any way that I can put these keywords into this content so that both make sense to me and to my audience? And a lot of times what I'll find is that when I'm searching for the keywords, I'll see some good ideas there that will be able to refine what I was thinking about writing about. So, I basically go back and forth, and I write from my right brain. I write from my creative. But in the back of my left, on the other side of my head, I've said, oh, okay, well, this is what people are looking for. Maybe not me, but so that's how I justify that.
So I mean, there's a contrast here, isn't there? There's a contrast between where you begin and where you. So you begin with your left brain, and my process that I just described is really kind of working with my right brain, trying to work with my right brain.
Start with my right brain because I've got a good creative idea of what it is that I'm about. But then I just check with my left brain.
Not such a bad thing to do. Now, before we move,
my dad used to call it a gestalt.
yeah. Before we move on, we did do some introductions, but you guys came late. So, Craig, before we leave you, would you please say what you do and where you are, and then we'll move on to our latest Roland, who has just joined us. So, Craig, say something about what you do.
Hi, Roland. I'm an SEO website guy that works in. I'm outside Rochester, New York. I try and help small businesses get found online and get their presence in a place where people will start finding them and come into their businesses. So I use online efforts to help small businesses gain customers.
Right on. And your business is called?
My business is called Who Marketing.
Who? Yeah, right. You should see his logo. It's kind of cute. Well, thanks for joining us this morning, Craig.
Yeah, I can show you my logo.
And Roland, how would you? Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Good morning.
And Roland, welcome. And how would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh well, I'm just kind of like happy just cruising into the conversation. Do want to say good morning to Nathan, Craig, and Carlo, and to yourself. Thank you for inviting me in.
Right on.
I will say that this is the only hangout that I am invited into that I come into without seeing what's going on before I came into the green room. It's the first time I've ever done that.
Oh boy. Was that scary?
A little, yeah, but I tend to get over the green room shakes pretty easily. So.
Yeah. Well, welcome. And just in case you don't know, we're having a conversation. Actually, we called it the Zen of Writing. And I started out by just kind of thinking through what my process is and how that comes about. And Craig shared his. So, Carlo, what about you? Do you do much writing in your work? And if so, what sort of a process do you follow? What happens to you when you're trying to...
Respectfully, I'm keenly interested in hearing Nate. I'll be glad to go last.
Oh, well, we're going to get to Nathan.
Okay.
So,
okay, I'll rally to the cause. Just briefly, I'm kind of a little bit cynical in the sense that I don't think, by his grace, I don't think I ever had an original thought. So I'm a big adherent of there is no good writing, there's only good rewriting. So if I'm compelled to write something, and I digress for a second. I remember telling a friend one time, I would like to go on a talk show as a reader. Because we always remember back in those days, this guy's a writer, and that guy's a writer, and this gal's a writer, and that gal's a writer. And I said to my buddy, I would like to go on that talk show and say, I'm a reader. I read about 200 to 300 books a year, and I'm happy to do that. And so when I'm compelled to write, I'm more digital, so I've been using computers since '79. So I'll have a tendency to bullet point what I need to write on, and then keep revisiting it from time to time until I come up with whatever it is that I need. And the problem I have is that for so many years in finance, my focus is absurdly technical. And sometimes I'll give my work to other people and I'd say, can you put this in human language for me? So, that's really it. I mean, I've enjoyed doing stuff, but it's like I used to have a drama teacher. I attended what's called the neighborhood playhouse curriculum for acting as relates to consultants. I became a member of a theater group because I had learned that Anwar Sadat and the Pope and other luminaries were technically trained actors. And so my acting teacher used to drill into our head saying, never call yourself an artist. Just keep mixing the paints and putting it up there and let somebody else decide. So that's, well, I'll walk away from how I do writing.
That's a very interesting perspective. But I'm happy you made reference to being the reader, because often we get so, especially when we're writing, we get so wound up in what we're doing, and that sometimes we forget that it needs to be applicable and readable and enjoyable for the reader. And I shouldn't forget to mention that when I first started writing my blogs, I had a girlfriend who was a little bit of an amateur writer who agreed to edit my blog posts for me before I posted them. And she did that for a year, and I often thank her dearly, because I've learned so much. I learned so much from that exercise, because she was brutal. and you know, she would say, what the heck does that mean? And you know, and I certainly I still don't count myself as a quote artist. So but at least I think I can string a few sentences together coherently. So but thanks for mentioning that. We have to pay attention to the reader, for sure.
Sure. If I just to come back for 1 second, all too often I'll read an article. Again, going back to in management consultancy, I've read so much documentation that I could more or less tell you who the author was in the group of people that I worked with. Some technicians would work for the industrial mindset. Other technicians would work for the executive mindset. And so you'd be reading an article, and I'd ask myself, what the hell is this guy trying to say? He's cutting and pasting a whole bunch of different articles into one discourse, and it's, you know, he's wasting my time. Anyway, so go ahead.
Well, we're at cutting and pasting rather than pulling it out of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah.
Bring on Nathan. I'm anxiously waiting for Nathan.
No, we're gonna go to Roland first. We're all gonna get, and we're gonna give Nathan the floor. So
Nathan's my guy. He's the reason we said the Zen of Writing. Don't you see Nathan sitting there in the zone, taking this all in?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So
sorry, Roland. I'm just playing.
Yeah. So Roland, do you write much? And if you do, what sort of a process happens for you?
That's a really interesting question, because maybe my answer is I don't know. I'm not so much geared towards technical prep. I tend to be like a stream of consciousness, go with the flow writer. I'll start writing and see where I end up. I usually have a purpose and a focus of what I'm going to write, but I'm more from the standpoint of like taking thoughts in my head and trying to create a translation so that other people can understand it. And other than that, I like humor. I like dry humor, and I'll tend to lean towards that. You know, nothing too blatant, but I like things that are funny, but not necessarily the type of hilarious comedy like slapstick. But I love the way humanism and realism is fun to laugh at. So I tend to lean towards that. But I'm not much of a technical writer. I'm sure that people would read my stuff and go, dude, he's a terrible writer. Yeah. But I really don't care. And so what happens is people read through what I've written, and either they're going to like it or they're not. And I've had people both say both of those things. And I'm okay with that because I'm just one person, so I can't please everybody. But I do think that I have probably a distinctive way of writing, and I'm in the midst of finding myself. So again, much the way you've been speaking, I don't attach myself to the word artist ever. I'm more of a manipulator and natural technician that doesn't know the technical everything to the down to the crossing the I's and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But luckily, my dad was an English teacher in a high school level, and he was correcting me on every single thing that I did wrong. So verbally, I could not step out of line. And I'm still one of the people who will cringe when someone says "me and my friends," where it's supposed to be my friends and I. So in the back of my mind, this type of thing is dawdling at all times. And when I think of writing online and I think of communication online, the first thing I think of is quality of communication. And nevertheless, I'm not that good at that because I tend to be a bit more rounded off with slang and terminology, and language has changed radically since I was a kid.
Has it ever? For
Yeah.
sure.
Language
Well,
and communication is just, really radically different. So I
I've
write within those realms.
well, Roland, what I've really noticed on your event pages for your Hangouts, there's usually quite an intro there that you've written, and I always read it.
I'm glad somebody's reading it because I have a lot of fun with those. I
Yeah.
tease people, I prompt them to want to come and watch what's going on, and just a bit of a challenge. I'm
Mhm.
not a sensationalist, but I do think that my view is kind of unique. As
Yeah.
everyone's view is unique, mine is unique.
Yeah. So
Thank you for that. Though. You just gave me a gift today.
my pleasure. Okay, so we've all of us have shared what our process is and how it works for us. And it sounds like all of us do some writing. We all do some writing for whatever purpose, being online or writing a blog or whatever. And I see that as quite different from doing what Nathan has done and and functioning as a writer. So what happens for you now, Nathan? How does that go? And I know that you spoke about being a technical writer for a while, and you're doing some different kinds of writing now. So talk to us a little bit about your Zen of writing.
Um, the only thing I can really say for sure right now is, well, number one, I almost wound up canceling this morning, and the reason for that is that I've just gone through a massive shift in my life on a spiritual level, which has completely changed my entire way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And in the wake of what happened, I actually couldn't write anything for several days, except to write to a couple of people about a little bit about what had happened, and then I just had to stop writing. I had to step away from my computer. And last night when I was talking with a friend of mine, another spiritual teacher who lives in Guelph, he said to me it would really help if you could sit down and, write a little bit of what might help you with grounding it. So for the first time in 3 days, I wound up writing about it, and I turned it into a blog post which went live this morning. But it's changed my entire perspective, and I really don't know how I'm going to be from now on. I've had to spend a lot of time in silence. So I can talk a bit about what I used to do before, but as to what it's going to be like going forward, I really don't know. My first bit of writing was 17 years ago when I was teaching a course on computer graphics. And they had been previously teaching with this one piece of software, and they got rid of it, and they got a new piece of software. And then they showed me the manual, and the manual was a piece of garbage. I'd look, and that was even before I became a writer. I knew it was worthless. I knew I couldn't use it, and it was for a different software program on top of it. So I went to my bosses and I said, I need to write a new manual. And they said, sure. They paid me $2,500 to do so, and I wrote the manual for my course. And then I taught my course based on the manual. Then they upgraded the software, and I did it again, and they paid me for it a second time. But getting into writing as a profession, I had never intended to do that. I was working as a software instructor for a while. Then I got fired. And I was in Victoria, just moved to there from Vancouver. I didn't have any prospects. I had nowhere to go. And my cousin came to me for the second time in 6 months. The first time he asked me about being a writer, I turned him down. So forget it. I do not want to be buried under mounds of paper. That was my reasoning, which, as it turns out, was legitimate. Because I did get buried under mounds of paper and software later. But he came to me. I had no prospects, and I said, okay. So my back was essentially against the wall, and I learned how to write. He taught me what to do. I followed his instructions, and I became a magazine writer. And one of the really great things that happened early on in that career was a guy by the name of David Tanaka, was the editor of the computer papers. I figured I'm going to write for computer magazines. Now, my cousin wanted me to go wide and do health and lifestyle and this and that, but I wanted computers, I wanted software, I wanted photography gear, I wanted all this stuff that I couldn't afford to buy. And I remember years ago, my cousin took me into the living room and he showed me this shelf, a bookshelf. You know how bookshelves are. And the bookshelf was filled with software. And he said, you follow what I'm doing, you can do this. And I thought, you're full of it. I didn't believe him. I really did think he was full of crap. But he said, you can probably do this. Well, I did. I went way beyond my cousin. I became a writer of software and hardware. I wrote for many computer and software magazines and photography magazines all over the world. And in terms of the process, every time it would come to a magazine, first I would need to think about, what do I want to write about? And then I would go in search of the magazines for the topic that I had in mind. And then I would research the back issues once I found them, to see what are they writing about, what's the tone, what can I get away with, what can I not get away with. And then I would put together a bunch of queries and send them off to editors. Now, way back in the early days, there were so many different magazines to choose from, and I would use like a shotgun approach, where I would essentially write the same query and send it out to about 40 magazines at once to see who would bite. And some would write back and say, take me off your list, and some would write back and say, nope, sorry, not interested, and others would say, ooh, love this. So whenever I structured an approach, whenever I did a query letter, I would always use 3 topics, and there was a good reason for it. If you pitch on one topic and they say, no, you've blown it and you're going to have to start all over again, you might have to wait a month. But if you pitch on 3 and they're different topics, you have a much better chance of being accepted. This is what I learned from my mentor. So once I would get that, then it would be the challenge of getting the software. And in the early days, I didn't have any credentials, so my editors would have to get it for me. And later, as I came to become better known, I could just call up somebody and say, hey, need some software. And they ship it to me. These days, it's mostly digital, so it's downloadable. I rarely have to get anything by mail anymore, which is great. But in terms of the writing process, the actual sitting down and getting stuff done, there are a couple of different ways. Like a while ago, not that long ago, I was working for a magazine called Windows Secrets. And I wanted to write about certain software programs, but the ability to talk about them in any cohesive way was way beyond my ability. I didn't have that knowledge base, and for me to sit down and try and figure it out would take me forever. So I used a technique which I learned way back at 2000, 2001, worked for a magazine called Streaming Media World. What I did was a technique of interviewing. Back then, I learned how to interview people. And when I worked for that magazine, I interviewed well over 100 execs from all over the world. So I evolved a style of interviewing, which I wrote about extensively later, how to do it. But what I did in this case with Windows Magazine, I'm talking about stuff like Process Explorer and Process Monitor and really heavy-duty Windows extensive programs that were way out of my league. So what I did is I went to a really great site called HARO. That's the acronym. It's called Help a Reporter Out. And yeah, it's a fabulous site, and it's a site for sources on any topic imaginable. So I went there and I posted about what I was doing, what I needed, and I found this awesome guy. The name of Joshua, his last name escapes me in the moment, but he contacted me. And he turned out to be this absolutely bulletproof and wonderful source on anything and everything I could have ever imagined to do with the topic. And so what would happen is I would get on the phone, much like we're talking here on a Hangout, only we would do it over Skype. And we would do these video talks, and he would share his screen, he would bring up the, and I had a lot of questions beforehand because I did a little bit of research. And we would just go back and forth, and through this process of interviewing, and then afterwards I'd transcribe it, I'd come back to him with more questions, I'd send it off to my editor, and my editor would look at it and go, oh yeah, cool, but what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And they say, oh, you've got 24 hours. I'm going, yeah! So I get on the phone, and I call my source, and one time I barely got him in time for the deadline. And he answered my questions real quick, and I'd fire them back off to my editor, and my editor's great, and next thing we know, it's in print. So the wonderful thing about interviewing somebody is that you don't have to do all the work yourself. You don't have to figure it out yourself. It's an unbelievable time saver. Now, some editors will go for it and others won't. They say, you must be knowledgeable, you must know it. I'm tired of trying to be the expert in that way. I just don't care anymore. But for many, many years, like let's say way back, I was working for a magazine, Web Reference. I was an associate editor and also one of the writers. So I'd get a software program, 3ds Max. And for those of you who know anything about animation, pretty expensive program. It's worth, at that time, and I don't know what it is now, but it was $4,000 to buy it on the shelf. So how would I do something like that? How would I review something like that? Well, luckily, in a lot of cases, these people would ship me a product guide. They'd ship me a reviewer's guide. And so what I would do is go through the reviewer's guide, and I'd go through all these different tutorials, and I might do a lot of cut and paste. But I would go through them with the idea of, okay, how does this work? Oh, and can I break it? Can I break it? Can I screw it up so it won't work? And so I would deliberately look for flaws when I would write like that. I wouldn't just accept the status quo that do this and it'll work. Well, quite often it didn't. And there were times when I would write about that and say, okay, so I'd do the cut and paste, then I'd work through it, and sometimes it wouldn't work. There were times where it simply didn't work at all. I wound up in a bit of a fracas with Adobe over that because they gave me a manual for something I wrote about it. I'm going, we don't want that in there. You got to take that out. Well, it's like it was in your manual. You wanted me to do it, but your software didn't work. That's the kind of thing that the user wants to see. You know. But anyway, they eventually fixed it, and that was the end of that problem. But the other side of it is people would ask me to write tutorials, and I wrote reviews, but I have to be honest with you, I hate writing reviews because they're so intensive, very complicated. They suck a lot of time, and if you're being paid as a writer, the pay sucks, to be blunt. Where I discovered I excelled, and this is what David Tanaka showed me. He took me under his wing, and he finally said to me, your number one skill is how to. And that's what I became known for. Anything you want to learn about any topic. And so basically the process of writing about it is you give me that piece of software, I'll sit down with it, I'll play around with it, I'll look at however it works, and again I'll see if I can break it, because I really want to see if I can break it. I can break it, then I can tell you what the limitations are. Because quite often, if you're a writer and you get a piece of software, you get any product, you're going to wind up getting, well, the product creators will talk about it in glowing terms. It's I'm trying to remember what the expression is for it. Not vaporware, that's software that doesn't exist, but it's software that's in theory, but it hasn't been created. Then the hardware, vaporware, there's bloatware, that's something else. But they give you a story about how it's supposed to be in glowing terms. And my experience, usually it's bullshit. Usually. And what you find when you actually sit down with it is that it doesn't work quite the way that they say it does. The glowing terms are to make you think that it's wonderful when in fact it's something else. Sometimes, many times the software developers will deliver, and other times I look at stuff and I'm going, this doesn't work the way you said it would. I can't make it function this way. It's missing something.
So, Nathan, you've it's kind of interesting that you've mentioned 2 or 3 styles, and the interview. Yeah, the interview style, the tutorial style, and the review style. And you talked about the amount of research that you needed to do, and you talked about finding good sources and so forth. And then I think the review thing, can I break it? And that's kind of almost like an editorial, isn't it?
Not really, no.
No?
It has to do with what's the word for it? Honesty is not quite the word for it. It's giving, like I'll give you a case in point. Like a number of years ago, I wrote a review on a product called Alias Sketchbook Pro, and that was the first incarnation of it, and it was really interesting because I wrote it not necessarily with the what's the word for it? Not legitimacy, nothing like that. It's integrity. That's the word. And so I want to come off in a way to the users that they know they're authentic, because one of the major problems that exists now when it comes to software and reviews or anything else is that the vast majority of what's being written is garbage. And the reason it's garbage is because the people who are writing the articles have a vested interest in the software. They don't tell the truth. They tell what they want the users to hear so that the users will buy it. Many times the people who write are affiliates. I'm not an affiliate. I don't have a vested interest in the software. And anybody who tries to say to me, we want you to write from our vested interest, I'm going, no dice. I'm going to write the truth about this. I don't care if you don't like it. Because my responsibility is to the user, not to the creator of the software. So in the case of Alias Sketchbook Pro, I found a few limitations. I don't remember what they were. There weren't anything bad. But the most amazing thing that happened after I wrote it a short time ago, I had an email. And it came from the lead tech who was involved in the creation of the software. And he said, this was a great interview. You illustrated what was right about the software, the limitations, some of the problems. He said factual and accurate reviews are rare. And that's what I always strive for whenever I write, is truth, accuracy, and accountability to the user. I don't write fluff, never. So my process is all about integrity as far as myself and the user is concerned. I want to make sure that I give them the best I can with everything I write.
So I see a note from Roland, and I'm sure that Carlo would probably ask the same. The note said, something to the effect I would really like to hear about your spiritual writing. But I got a sense that your introduction sort of gave me a sense that you weren't ready to talk about that.
Well, I can talk about it. I wasn't sure if if it was appropriate in this setting. If I'm going to, well, I can talk about it, sure.
This is a safe place to set yourself on fire.
Oh, I set myself on fire before I even showed up for the group this morning. And since I closed out Facebook and LinkedIn right now, I'm sure that there's plenty of stuff going on. I just want to find what happened was. Let me just get back to the Hangout here so I can see all of you. About 2 weeks ago, I was asked to partake in a webinar, and I created a product called How to Position Yourself as an Expert in Any Industry. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So as part of it, I talked about the positioning has to do with interviewing experts. And I've interviewed some major experts and celebrities. And of those celebrities, a guy by the name of Coach Dale Brown. Coach Dale Brown, he coached the LSU for 25 years. He's also the guy who discovered Shaquille O'Neal when he was a kid and coached him all the way through his years, and the two of them are really good friends. The other person I interviewed, many of you may have heard of him, his name is Neil Donald Walsh, and he wrote the Conversations with God series, and it's been heard by millions all over the world. I said in this seminar that one person I really wanted to interview was Eckhart Tolle. It's at the top of my list for people I want to interview. After it happened, somebody got in touch with me and said, hey, I know that Eckhart's publicist. I'm on really good terms with him. I can open the door. Well, so this went back and forth, and it created a whole bunch of stuff. And it opened the door, and the publicist there put me in touch with Constance Kellogg, who is the original publisher for The Power of Now and all of Eckhart's books in Vancouver, BC. Mm-hmm. Well, the first publisher looked at a short book I wrote on Amazon and wanted me to write about bullying, which was a big aspect of this book that I created. And I wasn't keen about it, but I finally said I'd do it. And when I started writing about it, I started to reveal on paper stuff that I'd never spoken about, very painful parts of my history. And there, one morning, I did something where I revealed a secret from my past, something I'd kept hidden for 37 years, something extremely painful to me. That's something I called the unforgivable sin. And it had to do with severe abuse when I was 19 and a particular thing that happened. And that particular thing that I called the unforgivable sin created major havoc in my life. But it was so painful I couldn't look at it until a few days ago. And when I wrote it down, I did something else. I wouldn't let my mind pull its old games of repression or amnesia or anything else. I did something else to make damn sure that it couldn't do that. I got on the phone at 5 in the morning. I called a crisis line, and I read my words. And I didn't really realize what I was doing at the time, but I know now. It was to make it real. It was to make it not with the idea that it would become an entrenched story, but that it would make it so I couldn't hide it anymore, so I couldn't hide from myself anymore. So, getting to what happened and what I wrote. So what happened was after I wrote it, I can't see you guys now because I switched to the page where I want to read what happened. So after I wrote it, kind of hung out in my space here for a while, then I noticed I became really, really tired. And I had to go to bed. And I went to bed and I woke up and I kind of wandered around for a while. And then I noticed after a while my body really started to hurt and I felt really off balance. I was really wobbly, but my body also really started to hurt. My chest, my back, my shoulders just felt like somebody had beaten the crap out of me. And at that point I went over and I grabbed an ibuprofen, I popped a pill, and I became really tired. And I went back to bed. About half an hour later I woke up. And when I woke up, my entire world had changed. So this is what I want to read. So how would I describe it? The story ended. The story of the suffering Nathan and his victim story stopped. All past, everything that ever was, even beyond the victim story and all of my history, vanished. It feels like it happened long ago, and that's the truth. But even what happened yesterday or a few hours ago seems like an age ago, an eternity. My sense of past seems unreal. It's like a dream. It's like something that's happened to somebody else. One of the paradoxes of the loss of past is also the loss of future. The only thing I know for sure now is that I'm here. And I can think, and I'm still really off balance. I still feel really wobbly. And part of the reason you saw me sitting with my eyes closed is because I simply couldn't be present in the way that I normally am. It was my way of, I could listen to everybody, but I needed to be in my space as grounded as I could because it was very hard for me to do anything else. So anyway, what happened is I became aware that I'm here, just that I am. It's the only thing I know. I don't know anything else. The other thing that happened is my anger vanished. I noticed that for the most part, at least, I'm not angry at others. I'm not angry at myself. I'm not angry at my life. And when I think about those who I was once angry at, I feel something. And then when I stop, it just vanishes, and I just feel this emptiness, and like nothing was ever there. And
so Roland has been adding some comments in there. Roland,
please,
how would you like to add them verbally?
Please let me finish. I need to finish. Let me finish, and then please, add your comments. I'm almost there. So what's been happening, or what has happened, is I have all my knowledge of how to do things and my intelligence and everything else, but I'm no longer able to tell the story of who I was. It's not there. There are fragments, there are bits of memories, but the moment I stop trying to do anything, it vanishes. When I look to my left on an energetic level, there's nothing there. I can't tell my story. I cannot define myself in any way by the story, by position, or anything else. It's all gone completely. I don't have any sense of identity anymore. The only thing I know is I am. And as for the limiting beliefs, the intense pain from all that story, that's gone too. And the only thing I know is that I'm here and that I am, and that's it. And I wasn't planning to share that this morning because I really didn't know if this was the right place to do it. When I talk about a massive shift, it's huge. I keep looking around, like trying to get a sense of, maybe there's something I can hold on to, but I can't. It's impossible. So that's and I've spoken to a spiritual teacher friend of mine. I know actually what happened to me. I looked it up in the Power of Now because I was pretty damn sure that Eckhart had written about it. And I've been modeling Eckhart for a couple of years. So that this has happened it's not really a surprise. Everything that's happened to lead me to this crisis point, to make this thing go bang, I can see it was all perfectly orchestrated. It was absolutely necessary, and it did exactly what it was meant to do. And now it's like I've been born into a 56-year-old body, but I don't have any sense of history, no sense of me. And the whole story of that is gone. And it's a very odd place to be, and I feel very off balance, which apparently is quite normal for anyone else who's had this. So that's all.
So Roland, say what you said because it's appropriate to what Nathan's been telling us.
I don't know how appropriate it is. It is my view of the transition that Nathan's been going through. First of all, Nathan, I want to say thank you for expressing what you did, because you have given me something to mirror my own experiences and to describe and relate to what has happened in my life, not in the same type of timeline, not in the same way, but then, you know, when they say all paths in life lead to the same source or same ending, is the same destination. It's basically evolving into the realms of the I am that you described and the reality of what you are, not what you're attached to from the past, the things that you have trouble getting rid of and processing in your life, and the things that we attach ourselves to that are literally us clinging to the side of the river, the branches of the roots of the trees, while we're trying to flow downstream. You know, I mean, you can't flow downstream if you're clinging to roots. And what it seems to me is like you got really into the flow and the energy of the universe. Now, that's a really superficial generalization for what's happened, but that's what I see went on with you.
Yeah, there is a bit more. I'm just going to see if I can find it. Like I said, I looked for this because I knew that I didn't know. I suspected. Yeah, I found what I'm looking for. Just bear with me a minute or two while I bring it up on screen a bit better so I can read it. I was pretty sure that Eckhart Tolle had written about this in the Power of Now, but I wasn't entirely sure. Just bear with me a minute. So what he wrote about, the intense pressure of suffering that night must have forced my consciousness to withdraw from its identification with the unhappy and deeply fearful self, which is ultimately a fiction of the mind. This withdrawal must have been so complete that this false suffering self immediately collapsed, as if a plug had been pulled out of an inflatable toy. What was left then was my true nature as the ever-present I am, consciousness in its pure state prior to identification with form. I know for a certainty that that's what happened. Because it's funny, I'd been talking about this for a long time with a lot of people, but I didn't realize that I didn't see this coming. Mind you, with every major spiritual transition I've gone through, I never saw it coming. And this is hugely important for me and for anybody else who's on this journey, but it kind of shocked me because I was saying, like, the only thing I know is that I am here now, and that's it. And if I break it down even more simply, it's the I am. That's all. I am. And I'm very much aware that that's present, it's now, it's eternal, it extends in all directions, and it's beyond time. And I've known things like this before, but never quite in this way.
Thanks for joining our Google Apps.
Sorry, I'm hearing what sounds like an announcement.
Yeah.
I've got to go to another webinar. Man, I hate to leave on this note, but I've got another one back to back. I'm going to watch the rest later. Nathan, thank you very much for sharing. Anything I say is anticlimactic, but I appreciate you being who you are.
Thank you.
Okay. See you guys. Goodbye.
Bye, Carlo.
See you, Carlo.
Bye.
I think that I'm looking at our time. We've been on for a full hour now, so I think this is probably a good time for us to break.
Sure.
Thank you, Nathan. I can see that going forward, that your life is going to probably change a great deal.
It already has.
Yeah.
I have no idea, none whatsoever.
Well, could I go back to the poem that I gave from Lao Tzu? It fits again, doesn't it? Let things ripen and then fall. Force is not the way at all. Just let go and you will see. The way to do is to be. Fits, doesn't it?
It's pretty good. I like Lao Tzu.
Yeah, right on. All right, so thank you very much for sharing your story, Nathan.
You're welcome.
It certainly went further than we expected. Thought we were going to be speaking about writing.
Well,
Maybe it will be about writing again.
Yeah, my process has changed,
Mm-hmm.
but everything about me has changed,
Yeah.
and I don't know what's going to happen now.
So, so again, I want to thank Carlo, who was here, and Craig and Roland, and you, Nathan, for participating this morning. And we will close now by saying good luck in what your next what happens next, Nathan.
Thank you.
So this is Lowell Ann signing off for being your own CEO.